afternoon, everyone, and thanks so much for being here. And for me, it's a true honor to be here because it's not a usual thing that I do. I feel like I'm surrounded by a lot of people that could inspire me, given I'm not from a Power Platform or Dynamics background at all. So I'm the odd one out here. I try to learn a thing or two, and I hope you do the same from what I'm going to tell today. I'm going to talk a bit more about what is Fabric, before Matej will join me and talk about how Resco is already using this in their solutions. So first, a few of the topics. There we go. A few of the topics that I want to talk about is what is Fabric? What is Microsoft Fabric? Where did it came from? Is it really new? Maybe not. Then we'll talk a bit more on how can a solution like Fabric add value to your platform and to your solution. Then Matej will take over, talk about the Resco way of collecting data and how Resco Inspections can already work with Microsoft Fabric. And last but not least, of course, we will also help you on how you can get started using this solution. I will very briefly introduce myself. Well, actually, Vanik already did before, because somewhere in my title is Solution Architect. But I want to add one more name to this that just doesn't say anything. Technical Evangelist. I have a title that doesn't say anything. I have a title that I sometimes have no clue what my job description actually is. But the one thing that does tell a thing, I'm a 5 year in a row Microsoft Most Valuable Professional in the category Data Platform. Yes, I do sometimes a few things with Power Apps, up till the point that my girlfriend gets upset with me because I collect data from everything I can. My entire smart home is connected to Fabric, obviously. All the kilometers I drive with my car are feeding into Fabric. If I switch on or off a light at home, feeds into Fabric. Yes, I'm a nerd. I'm just going to admit it. So outside of my social networks, my favorite stuff, what do I do in my free time? Riding my bike because it collects data and it's fun. Put that into Fabric. Yes, I like a beer every now and then. You probably know the app Untapped, collecting data. And rating the beer, which flows into Fabric. So Fabric seems to be a buzzword here. Let's talk a bit more on what Fabric is. Fabric was introduced in public at Microsoft Build last year, 2023. That's the point it went became available as public preview, and they called it the data platform in the era of AI. Of course, AI, Copilot, there we go again. So it was a kind of new kid on the block. At least that's how it was presented. There were a lot of news articles about it. Microsoft was capable of bringing all the analytical capabilities together. Analytical capabilities from data collection and ingestion into a platform, all the way up to the point of the output, visualizing it, maybe even building copilots on top, and chatting with your data with things like a Power Virtual Agents integration, if you like. But let's just have a closer look what Fabric actually is and what is behind that new term. If we have a closer look and we look at it as a unified data analytics platform, we can actually split it up into multiple layers. We start at the bottom. The first layer and what makes Fabric unique compared to all the analytical capabilities and services Microsoft already had is basically that it is a software as a service solution. Just like you have with Power Platform, just like you have with Dynamics, it is just there. Compare that to what we had before with SQL Server integration services, if you're from that time, I'm not. With Data Factory, with anything else that runs in Azure, you deploy something in Azure first, but you basically deploy an empty box. That's completely different with Microsoft Fabric, where it is there. You go to app.fabric.microsoft.com, and you're into Fabric. You can start using everything there. Security and governance are at the core of the product. No matter if you're using it in a data science workload, in a warehouse workload, in any of the other workloads that Fabric offers, security and governance is managed throughout the entire platform in a unified way. So you don't duplicate all these governance rules from place to place. It's just there. Set it up once, and it works. Third component is compute and storage. Of course, there must be something that you pay for, and that's the compute and storage. Those are the two only pricing components behind Fabric. The more compute you need, the more compute you're using and consuming, the more you will start paying. Next to that, storage is the second pricing component, and storage is just how many gigabytes do you save on the storage. That's it. Interestingly enough, previously we had something with Azure Storage where you paid for the data ingest and the data when data left the storage account. That's gone, because we only just pay for the raw storage of the data, and all the transfer of the data is calculated as part of the compute. It's a unified business model behind it. And a unified business model, which means as much as there's one product team behind the whole of Fabric, which is split up into multiple smaller sub-teams that are each working on one of the workloads that we'll see in a second. There's one business model from Microsoft's perspective, but also if you're implementing it in a center of excellence or whatever, and you're responsible for running the analytics capability in your company, Fabric should be in one team, if you ask me. Although Power BI, yes, it has one foot into Power Platform, and it has also one foot into Data Platform, I think it should be centralized in one team. Then we have the unified data foundation, the unified data layer, and that's what we call One Lake. One Lake, which is one storage location for your entire organization. Compare it to OneDrive, compare it to SharePoint. You can just have one SharePoint for your organization. You don't have multiple SharePoints. One Lake is one storage location with one endpoint, and all your data is saved in that place. If you need the data, if you need to have access to the data, you just go there. In reality, in technical terms, there are many storage accounts underneath, but it's all virtualized, and therefore, for you as a user, it acts like one. Then we have something that's called One Security. One Security is not there yet. One Security is one of the big bets and one of the big promises for Microsoft Fabric, where they say, we put the security on data level. So we're securing the data directly on the data level, and we don't care where you consume it, which is completely different than what we're used to do in the past years. In the past years, you secured the data in Power BI, but it came from a SQL database where it was also secured, or it came from Dataverse where it was also secured. So we had different levels of security. And now we just say, no, we put the security on data level, and it's always secured wherever you use it. One Security, don't be confused, is already renamed, even before we got it. It's now called Unified Security. The next thing we have is the compute. And the compute is basically what we need in order to consume the data that we saved in One Lake. That compute is a unified serverless compute engine, which is something that we call capacities. So if you're familiar with Power BI Premium capacities, this is essentially the same thing. So you buy a capacity, which is the computer, the big virtual machine behind it, what you're using in order to consume your data, transform your data, bring it elsewhere. It's one layer of compute that understands different languages. And natively, it understands T-SQL, Transact SQL, things like Spark, very powerful, KQL, which is more used for real-time analytics, Cousteau query language, and analysis services. And analysis services is still the engine behind Power BI, and it's the same analysis service engine as that you can run separately in Azure, if you like. And then we get all the familiar tools on top of this. These are all the tools that we have and might already had before that are part of Fabric. And that starts with data integration, what we do with Data Factory. Azure Data Factory was there before, where we could transform and copy the data easily into another location, which is now brought to Fabric, and they're also available as a service. So we have data integration with Data Factory. Then we had a product called Azure Synapse Analytics. Parts of that also flow into Microsoft Fabric now, and we have that in services like the data engineering service, where you build lakehouses, where you use notebooks to transform your data, where you can build environments, totally different from environments that you have in Power Platform, but we have something environments. I won't go into the details there. You can build warehouses, but you can also do data science. Data science is here kind of under the name Synapse. However, you could best relate it to Azure Machine Learning, Azure AutoML, and Machine Learning Studio. These are the services that are integrated here. You have real-time analytics, which was previously known as Azure Data Explorer. And then we have, obviously, Power BI. Power BI was already there for a long while, for 6, 7 years, maybe 8 even. And that's where we really put all the data we have and collect it into something visible, something that we can consume. And last but not least, on the complete right side, we have the new kid on the block. That's data activator. Data activator is, well, maybe just Power Automate on steroids. It allows you to trigger automated actions and processes based on data. So whenever a truck driver ends up in traffic, for example, based on the real-time analytics and the truck has a sensor, we know that that truck is stuck in traffic. So we can already place an order for the warehouse to load a new truck and send it still to the customer, because we promised the customer to deliver in the same day. Just as an example. That's what you can do with Data Activator. What is really different than what we could already do with Power Automate? It is triggering in real time, and that's the big difference. So it is basically super snappy. If a new record comes in, it directly triggers these actions. This is a holistic overview of the unified data analytics platform. But what capabilities can we expect to do within a platform like Fabric? Let's start with data movement. Data movement as the first one, just bring data from A to B. I have data maybe on premises, set up a gateway, and I copy all that data into Fabric, into one lake. That's what you would do with Data Factory. Then we have things like data lakes. Data lakes is where we structure it. We put things in schemas, we put it in folders, we make a table structure out of it, so we can easily consume it and read it. Data lakes is, let's say, the new version of data warehouses. Warehouses are always structured, have a schema, table context, maybe stored procedures. With data lakes, we can also support unstructured data. Think about images, think about audio. Whatever you like, you can all save it in one lake and consume it through a data lake. Data engineering, where we do the transformations of the data. Data integration, where you can even do things like shortcuts by just linking other storage to your Fabric environment. Data science to enrich our data, build algorithms, build models. Real-time analytics to have sensor data flowing into Fabric. Think about what I'm doing with all the lights in my home, for example. Business intelligence, and that's the part where Power BI is purely positioned. And the automated actions with Data Activator. So what does Fabric really look like? Well, actually it is one platform with one interface. No matter who I am, if I'm a data engineer, whether I'm a data analyst, a data scientist, it all looks roughly the same. So we're all looking at the same interface. However, there's a small difference here. All we see here are basically, 5 screenshots of Fabric. All 5 look 90% the same, but they're slightly different because we have a persona-optimized experience. And that persona-optimized experience allows you to click on a button on the left bottom of the screen and switch to, I'm a data engineer, I'm a data scientist, or I'm a data analyst, I want to work with Power BI, which gives you a limited set of items that you can work with. And these limited set of items is basically what we see right here, where you can choose, I want to create a data lake, I want to create a new report. So you get relevant items fitting your persona. Of course, there is still a way to say, I want to show them all, but you get a long list of all the items you can create in Fabric, which can also lead to confusion. Therefore, persona-optimized experience. So let's talk a bit more in detail about all the different workloads that we have and the core elements of Fabric. To start with one lake. One lake, I already told you it's the central place in your organization where all your data will be saved. However, coming from an app background, coming from Dynamics background, you might be using Dataverse a lot. Dataverse can be easily linked to Fabric with a shortcut. And a shortcut means as much as what you also do on your computer, on your desktop. You create a shortcut to the one folder so you know where your documents are located. A shortcut in Fabric is doing essentially the same thing. It gives you a shortcut from one lake to wherever the data lives. If it lives in Dataverse, whether it lives in another storage account, even in other clouds, even if you have data in AWS or elsewhere. It is one lake as you have one lake for your entire organization, one copy of the data to be consumed by all the engines. So you no longer copy data from Dataverse to a SQL database, to a data platform, and another copy into Power BI. And we just have one copy that lives in one lake, and we consume it everywhere. So everything is virtualized. We have one security model, well, coming soon, defined soon. And there's a centralized data hub. And the data hub is sort of a catalog where you can browse through all your data. You can see what is the data you have access to, what is the data that you as a user can start consuming, and what other data products were already built by others that you can start consuming. Those shortcuts, they live within Fabric, and they connect directly to OneLake. But shortcuts can also exist between different workspaces. And a workspace is where you logically categorize your artifacts, your items. So where your notebook lives, your data lake lives, your report. A workspace is maybe just a folder where you categorize these things together. And you can create shortcuts between workspaces, but also to other storage that you have on the bottom, to other Azure sources, but also to Amazon sources, but also to Google Cloud Storage, or whatever you can think of. Shortcuts also work with any of the Dynamics. There we go, yeah. Any of the Dynamics capabilities. Think about Dynamics F&O, think about field services, CRM. They can all feed data into Dataverse, and from Dataverse we can make that shortcut into Fabric, which allows us to, with just a few clicks, to start consuming the data that we collected in any other platform, and start consuming that data and analyzing that data in Fabric. With data integration, we can do things like building pipelines to orchestrate our end-to-end process, which is the data factory part. We can build data flows, which use Power Query as a transformation tool, which you might know from Power Platform data flows, which is, again, a trade-off of Power BI data flows and probably also mapping data flows. And there are a lot of things called data flow at Microsoft. And then we have notebooks, which is a rich experience to do code-based transformations and save the result of that back into your data lake. Looking at the data engineering aspects, that's where you will do things like building lakehouses. A lakehouse where you typically work in what we call medallion architecture. So you classify your data based on how rich and how mature your data is. So we work with bronze, silver, and gold layers. Transformations with notebooks and Spark jobs, pipelines to do the heavy lifting and bulk data copy, or import notebooks if you already made them anywhere else, like Databricks or Synapse before. So the data lakes and the warehouses also come with a pre-wired SQL endpoint. So if you want to consume the data that lives in Fabric outside again, you can use the SQL endpoint to consume it in SQL Server Management Studio, use it as a source in a Power App, or whatever you want to do. You can trigger stored procedures and views if you like. And then we have the Power BI workload, last but not least, which is, of course, where we'll build the fancy part of it. So far it's all technicalities, and now you can start visualizing it. You can start analyzing it. You build semantic models or data sets, the prior name. Build dashboards, build scorecards and metrics to measure your KPIs. Next to that, this is also the part where you can, again, start integrating things in Power Platform, for example. So a Power BI report or a Power BI visualization can be embedded into a Power App or can be embedded into Dynamics to basically bring these worlds back together again. Of course, if you like, I would be the last one to advise you, but you could also bring it into Excel with live connection, so you don't copy the data into Excel, but it creates a live connection to OneLake. But so far, we talked about a lot of different personas. And all these personas will use a different set of skills and tools from Fabric. So starting with the data engineer, that will most likely use things like the data factory workload, the warehousing, engineering, and real-time analytics. The data scientist will enrich that data with data science workloads and Azure machine learning. We have the data analyst that will mostly consume stuff from the warehouse, consume the real-time analytics data feeds with the real-time data, and build Power BI reports and scorecards out of that. Then we have the data citizens, or the makers, or whatever you want to call them, that can build self-service reports, self-service analysis, do that via Power BI, but also integrate further into Microsoft 365, integration in Teams, in Power Platform. And on the bottom, one to not forget are the data stewards. The data stewards that keep an overview of where does our data go? Who's the owner of this data? How do we make sure that this data is classified as confidential, well secured, and doesn't leave our company? A lot of different personas that come into play in the world of data and enriching your data and analyzing your data. But before we have a closer look at how Resco put this into practice, let's have a very quick look at what a simplified solution architecture could look like when you implement all of this with Microsoft Fabric and basically feed your data from the complete left side as a data source. Could be Resco Inspections, obviously. Feed it into Fabric with a notebook, store it into a lakehouse, which is a bronze layer. It's raw data. We mature that data. We fix a few things in that. We remove null values, for example. And our silver layer of data is our standardized set of data. It's standardized. It is classified. It's cleaned. And then gold layer is purpose-driven. On the gold layer, we say, this is specifically for this semantic model. This is where we enrich it with business logic. And that's where we build a semantic model on top in the Power BI workload, where we build metrics, and we build a report on top of that to visualize it. All this is a simplified version. If you really start implementing Fabric solutions, it will be a bit complexer than this. But with that, I want to invite Matej to the stage to talk about what Resco is doing with Fabric.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Mark, for the great introduction to Fabric. And now, yes, we're going to talk about how we can use it at Resco and how we actually do use it already. Just to repeat, I was here already today. I'm Matej. I switched a few icons over here. I do not cycle, but I run and I play in a band. And I do not do so much stuff with Fabric, obviously. But I love Resco and Power Platform. How it started with Resco and Fabric. This is where I work. Some of you were at our offices yesterday. So most of the time I'm just here working on the synchronization and offline. But occasionally, like today, I speak at a conference. And I visited this conference in Tallinn, Estonia. And there I first time I saw Fabric and notebooks in action. It was like a complete eye-opener for me, and I thought to myself that this could be the missing piece for the perfect backend tool for what we are doing with inspections and for what data we are creating. Just to recap on Resco Inspections, it's a solution for creating dynamic forms with a lot of business logic, out-of-the-box components built for mobility, built for field workers, with strong performance and built for large-scale scenarios. We have some customers who complete more than 200,000 of questionnaires every month. So it's really like building up data and high-quality data. So we are thinking for ourselves for quite some time, how can we get more value from these inspections data and how we can help our customers get more value from it. And the answer we find in Fabric. Because Fabric can do the data engineering and it can transform the data into structured data, which is then easily consumed by AI and BI, which is part of Fabric. Then we can take advantage of the one storage, the unified storage, the one lake, which is also much, much cheaper than storing your data on Dataverse. Also, we have heard today a few times that this kind of data can really grow in your backend. And what you want to do is offload it from the what used to be CRM, from Dataverse, from Power Platform, and move it to a data platform, because you will need the analytical tools more than access for Power Platform users. And what's also great is the automation processes that you can do with data pipelines and all kinds of automation that you can do in Fabric. So there's really a lot. As Mark has shown you, Fabric is not a completely new thing, and there is so much it has to offer. All right, now let's see a bit how this actually works. So this is an example of the data processing notebook, which we have prepared at Resco and which works with the inspections data. So the notebook is basically it's a feature of Fabric where you can define these cells where you input some script and you can run it, and it can access all kinds of data. It can save it. It can modify it, process it. So what we are doing is first I run this code cell, and it returns to me all questionnaires, all answered questionnaires from my Dataverse. In this, what you are seeing or not seeing so well, is a list of questionnaires, like in a table, exactly how it's stored on Dataverse. And the actual answers from my questions are stored in a specific field, which is called Resco serialized answers, and it's stored as a JSON string. Because as you have heard today, creating millions of questions in one table for each answered question, which within a questionnaire is not the best idea. So we use JSON, which looks basically like this. And like I can read, okay, so the location of inspection was Boston. I can somehow get the information from this JSON, even though it's code, but it's not the best. It's not the best if I don't have it in a table. I cannot easily run or create a Power BI report from this. I need to do parsing. I need to check. Okay, here is a question group. Here is a question. But what the next thing our script is doing is actually it takes the template of the questionnaire and it creates one table in one lake for each questionnaire template that we have. So now the rows are still questionnaires, but the columns are each of my questions, which you have seen in the JSON. So the JSON can be parsed within the notebook, and I can prepare the data that I really need for each of my templates. So what's great about this is that it works universally for any template, but also you can adjust the code if you know, okay, I will not need this group or this template. You can adjust the code yourself and make it fit your needs. So yeah, what we are left with, here's my repository, here's my one lake, and you can see that there are two new tables which answer for the templates which I had in my Dataverse. Right, and what can I do next is create a data pipeline to make this automated. So I create a new pipeline where I will define the source of my data, which will be Dataverse. And as I also said, then, for example, you can create a pipeline which will only take questionnaires older than 3 months from my Dataverse. And then you can create a delete job on Dataverse to delete this data from Dataverse, so you can only have them stored here in one place. So here's the import. Next, I add there the notebook. So this will process the data fetched from Dataverse. And yes, this notebook, its early version, is available from Resco, and you can just import it into your Fabric. So it's very easy to get started here. You just create a one lake, import a notebook, create this pipeline, and you are good to go. What's great about these pipelines that they can be scheduled. So for example, I can schedule it to run daily at 12 a.m. and I will have refreshed data in Fabric every day, or you can even use it for like every 10 minutes. It's up to you. Right, so from that, we can easily create these nice reports which will combine the data from Dataverse from the data from the JSONs inside these questionnaires. So that's also a great thing about this, that some tables can be still linked directly with Dataverse, for example, the customers or the inspectors. So this is live data from Dataverse, which will refresh automatically. And if we will have a new customer or a new inspector, this will be automatically refreshed. But there's other kinds of data which was parsed from the JSON, and we can get specific information because now I would just select which columns I would like to use within my report, and I don't need to worry about the JSON at all. And I get the insight that one of my inspectors is not doing as good as the rest, so probably we should do something about that. Right. So the first touch was back in February when we learned about Fabric. I started to do some investigation for myself because I was interested in it, and with great support from Andrew. And in March, we did a first internal demo, and we decided to move on with this, and we formed Resco Fabric action team within Resco, and in April already we had the first version of the script processing notebook ready, and we also did a webinar, Resco Masterclass, when we presented this solution. And we are here in June, so it's really great to have Marc and to really like bring these two worlds together. And let's see where this goes. We got some great feedbacks from that, and we are already starting the first deployment test with one of our customers. So just to recap on the value, the first one is the storage. You can get much cheaper storage, and it's in one place with all the analytical tools, as Marc said, in the one data platform. So that's exactly where you would like the data to be, with maximized insights and connected to all the BI NI tools inside the one hub. What's next? It's up to you, up to us. You can start a Fabric trial. It's off charge for 60 months. That's what I did. It's very easy to start, and you can just play around with it. On request, we can share with you the notebook, and you can build your pipeline, put the notebook inside, and see what you get. And if everything runs good, then you can benefit from all the Fabric has to offer to you. Yep. Thank you. And with Marc, we'll wrap up.
So as Matej has just showed us, it is pretty easy to get started with Fabric. Even if you're not familiar with it yet, we will see familiar interfaces like data flows where you can do the bulk upload from all the data that was saved in Resco Inspections and bring it into one lake. As he clearly explained, you can do bulk offloading like everything older than 3 months to optimize the storage cost and also the performance in the end, of course. The architecture I showed before, it was also pretty good visible, I think, in the pipeline that he built at the end. In the last demo, where he said, like, okay, we bulk import it, then we do the transformations where we basically bring it into that silver layer to mature our data. And then finally, onto the gold layer, we built that semantic model to be able to visualize it, add business logic to it, and consume it in the end. I think a notebook is just one way to get started. It is pretty useful to benefit from the work that's already been done by Resco. But other than that, as he also explained, you can bring in live data from Dataverse that if a new inspector gets added, if a new employee or whatever, new customers, it is all directly visible in your end result, in your report that you're consuming, that you're looking at when you wake up and in the morning want to see how your business is doing. I'm again going to repeat 3 of the next steps that you can take. start your Fabric trial today. We didn't talk yet about the pricing of Fabric. The only thing I shared is it runs on a capacity. That capacity is free for 60 days, but it is pretty good scalable. Even if you need to start paying for it, the pricing starts at 260, or depending on your Azure region, 260 or 300 euros a month if you leave it running 24/7. If you just shut it down during night, outside of business hours, especially for your trials, just shut it down after 5 p.m. You don't need it during the night. Then you can save cost massively. If you bring it into production, obviously, then you want to run it throughout the night and do the bulk loading during the night. But you can scale up and down whenever you need it. Download the templated solution. Reach out to Resco, reach out to the team, help or ask them for the template to get you started. And follow the step-by-step guide, also the guided learning of Microsoft that will help you to build your analytical model and build your reports on top. With that, I want to thank you once more for your attention.